Now, can we see Mr. Gardner's chart, too, to introduce it into this conversation?
Well, that's all right. Mr. Gardner, come forward.
He has suggestions about how to do it, too, that we should integrate into our list.
Don't read us long language, however, because we need to see it in writing.
No, I just wanted to maybe start with maybe the broader context of the letter that we wrote. I'm an impatient person. That's probably why I have this job. But my board is also impatient, particularly on this issue. And so that was really one of the reasons that we convened this roundtable at the beginning of the month, to really look among stakeholders and agencies of how can we move this forward faster. And I've definitely appreciated that all of you are now fully engaged with how do we move this faster. We basically had three recommendations, sort of phases of how to think about this levies prioritization. And let me start with the long term, which I think is quite consistent with what your staff has laid out here, is to do that based on the economic values, to do a prioritization exercise. My understanding is that part of the reason that may take a while is the limitation on state resources on this economics analysis. I would totally support Mr. Nordoff of 2015 is too long. We need to complete that study much sooner so that the state has a clearer idea of where to invest its dollars. So that's the long term. I think we're in pretty good alignment on that approach. I also think that you can do that exercise, the matrix approach, in a month and put it into the Delta plan. But it is not just an analytic exercise of costs and engineering. It has to incorporate the values of the different interests. And that's what we really tried to do in listening to the roundtable discussion, listening to the different interests, and putting forward a proposal to you. So there are specific mechanisms for gathering those values and perspectives into a matrix type of format. I would suggest there are probably a few additional ones that I would add to Mr. Nordoff's list. I think there's value in the levies. When we heard this at the roundtable, there's value in the levies in protecting the ecosystem. So that's something to consider. There is potential value in the islands for ecosystem restoration, and that may influence where you do levy investments. So I think there are a number of specific nuances that we could add to that. But basically, the mechanism in sort of our, it's not quite our immediate term, but our midterm matrix approach is that you go out to those interests and you get people to score each island on a 1 to 5 scale based on their considerations about levy failure. And it can incorporate, and you talk to the expert group on water supply and rank each and score each island. So you can very quickly get input from experts that represent the values of all these different factors. So that's the kind of 1 month plan. The immediate plan we laid out in our letter is we believe you should commit now in the Delta plan to islands that you're going to recommend for immediate investment. And so that means including a recommendation to the legislature that they commit dollars from Proposition 1E to specific islands immediately. And the way we fashioned that list of islands was looking again at the common interests and the co-equal goals. So looking at what are the islands that are highest priority to meet water supply reliability. And you have, and the chairman has mentioned frequently, the letter from the urban water agencies on those priorities. And what are the interests and benefits to the people in the Delta? And there, I think the criterion is this HMP standard. As Mr.
Based on what again, please?
The HMP standard. That by not meeting the HMP standard, those islands are not eligible for federal disaster assistance. So focus immediately on those. We suggested they go to PL 8499. There may be some exceptions to that.
Your discussion is one of the more analytical discussions, but ultimately it comes down to a question that you'd like to have a set of programs, policies adopted for which eventual funding can be gained.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the basic question is, to what extent is the state currently legally obligated to maintain all or what portion of flood control in the Delta or anywhere in California? And I can't turn to any source that tells me with clarity what that is. I can look at a statute that sets up a funding formula,
right,
either out of a bond fund with some money or separately, but I can't look to any policy. I just look to funding piles of money or hopes for money.
And I think that's exactly right, and I think that's an important consideration in the immediate plan. The immediate plan is water supply reliability, creating eligibility for federal disaster assistance. And I think the third criterion to look at there is willingness of beneficiaries to pay. And you've got Delta interests and you've got water supply interests that are ready at the table. Caltrans is going to take a while for you to develop their willingness to be a beneficiary.
They will have to be told to pay. They
Exactly.
have no willingness to pay.
That will take some time. So the immediacy criteria are those three that I laid out. And you're absolutely right that the existing mechanisms are the existing funding mechanisms. So it's taking full advantage of the existing funding and committing. So this would be your 5-year plan while you're developing the longer-term strategy.
Well, I'll listen to that. I have reservations about some of your suggestions. To adopt them as a temporary expedient is actually adopting them as permanent policy, as best I can determine. HMP standard is without regard to the protection of water resources or ecosystem. It may provide benefits for water resources, reliability, or ecosystem, but simply saying it doesn't automatically guarantee it.
Right.
And if it provides value, assuming that all levees that don't meet HMP standard equally achieve the same state support, implies something that there's no analytical framework for it except, gosh, I want it, sounds great. And it does sound good.
I'm not sure I fully understood your point, because I'm not suggesting that all the islands that are in that first list only go to HMP standard.
A large part of them are non-project levees, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. For which the state currently has no legal financial responsibility.
But currently is
providing a discretionary
providing
funding
correct.
source under the subventions program,
right,
that we have already said we support being continued at least for a period of time. Okay, it's fine, but it is not as easy as a 1-month thing. Part of me believes we should do no process with hearings. We should just simply go and ask and answer the questions, because I've done Delta stuff since 1965, and I've never had a short conversation about Delta levees or heard a short presentation from anyone.
Should have come to our roundtable. It was actually quite informative. But I appreciate that challenge. But what I'm suggesting is the 1-month process is that the Delta plan can go further than just saying, here are immediate priorities, and it's essentially the iterative process that you use to develop the Delta plan.
Okay.
So that's my suggestion around it.
Okay.
I have copies. It's pretty similar to what Mr. Nordup gave. It's got a few other criteria. If there isn't support for moving forward on that kind of exercise immediately, I could send it. It's an example matrix, basically. I'm happy to share it, but
share it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe.
I don't have enough copies for everybody, but
okay. Thank you very much.